The Murder at the Vicarage, by Agatha Christie. Chapter 12. When Lawrence Reading arrived, I was called to the study. "We want to ask you a few questions, here where it happened," Colonel Melchett said. "Did you know that someone else has also confessed to the murder which you say you committed?" The effect of these words on Lawrence was immediate. Someone else. Who? Mrs. Protheroe, said Colonel Melchett. Nonsense. It's impossible. Well, we do not believe her story either, said Melchett. And Dr. Haydock is certain that the murder could not have been committed at the time you say you did it. So, why don't you tell us the truth? I've been a fool, Lawrence said. How could I have thought for 1 minute that Anne did it? I met her in the studio that afternoon. He paused. We know all about that, said Melchett. Right. Well, after the vicar saw us there, I promised him that I would leave the village. So I met Mrs. Protheroe that evening at 6:15 and told her my decision. Then we left the studio and met Dr. Stone, and I went off with him to the Blue Boar for a drink. I was upset, and afterwards I suddenly decided to go and see the vicar. At the front door I was told that he was out, but that Colonel Protheroe was in the study waiting for him. So I said I'd wait too. He stopped. Well, said Colonel Melchett. Protheroe was sitting at the desk. He was dead. Then I saw the pistol lying on the floor beside him. I picked it up and recognized it as my pistol. And I just thought Anne must have taken it, meaning to shoot herself because she was so unhappy. I thought that after we parted in the village, she must have come back here and... So I put the pistol in my pocket and left. Just outside the gate, I met the vicar. He said something nice and normal about seeing Protheroe, and I just started shouting. Then I walked and walked. And I thought that if Anne had done this awful thing, I was responsible. So I went and confessed. The colonel said, Did you touch the body? No. I could see he was dead without touching him. Did you see a note on the desk? No. Did you touch the clock? No. I remember a clock lying there, but I did not touch it. When did you last see your pistol? Lawrence Reading thought. I'm not sure. Where do you keep it? On a shelf in my cottage. Who has been to your cottage lately? Oh, crowds of people. I had a tea party the day before yesterday. Lettice, Protheroe, Dennis, and all their friends, and then some of the old ladies often come in. Do you lock the cottage up when you go out? No. No one locks their house up round here. Who cleans your cottage? Old Mrs. Archer comes in every morning. Would she remember when she last saw the pistol? I don't know. So, almost anyone might have taken it. The door opened and Dr. Haydock came in with Anne Protheroe. Forgive me, Anne, Lawrence said. It was awful of me to think you could have killed. She turned to Colonel Melchett. Is it true what Dr. Haydock told me? That Mr. Reading is not a suspect anymore? Yes. So what about your story, Mrs. Protheroe? I suppose you think I was foolish. Well, let us forget about that. What I want now is the truth. She nodded. I had arranged to meet Lawrence that evening at the studio, at 6:15. My husband and I drove into the village together. He said that he was going to see the vicar. I was rather worried about meeting Lawrence in the garden while my husband was inside the vicarage, but I thought that perhaps my husband wouldn't stay very long. To find this out, I came along the back road to the study. I hoped no one would see me, but of course Miss Marple was in her garden. She stopped me, and I explained I was going to meet my husband. Then I went straight across to the study and looked through the window. The room was empty, so I hurried down to the studio where Lawrence joined me. You say the room was empty, Mrs. Protheroe? Yes. Very strange. Inspector Slack whispered to the Chief Constable, who nodded. Do you mind, Mrs. Protheroe, just showing us exactly what you did? Inspector Slack pushed open the glass doors, and she stepped outside and walked round the house to the left. Then he told me to go and sit at the desk. As I sat there, I heard footsteps outside. They paused for a minute, then went away. Inspector Slack told me to return to the other side of the room. Mrs. Prothero came back through the glass door. "Is that exactly what you did?" Colonel Melchett asked her. "Yes." "Then can you tell us where the vicar was in the room?" asked Inspector Slack. "But I didn't see him." Inspector Slack nodded. "He was round the corner at the desk, and that's why you didn't see your husband." "Oh. Was he sitting there when he was killed?" "Yes, Mrs. Prothero. He was." "Did you know that Mr. Redding had a pistol?" "Yes." "Did you know where he kept it?" "I think I saw it on a shelf in his cottage." "When was the last time you were at the cottage, Mrs. Prothero?" "About 3 weeks ago. Mr. Redding usually came up to the hall. He was painting a picture of lettuce. We often met in the woods afterwards." Colonel Melchett nodded. "It's so awful, having to tell you these things," she cried. "And we did nothing wrong. We were just friends. That was all." "Thank you, Mrs. Prothero, for answering my questions," he said. "Then, can I go?" "Yes." So she and Haydock and Lawrence Redding left. Colonel Melchett remained, and Slack, who was looking at the note. It was then that I told him Miss Marple's theory. "Oh," Slack said. "I believe the old lady's right. Look, the time is written in blue ink." We were all rather excited. "You've examined the note for fingerprints, of course," said Melchett. "Of course. No fingerprints on the note at all. Fingerprints on the pistol are Lawrence Redding's." "Who lives in the other house next door?" the Colonel suddenly asked. "Mrs. Price Ridley." "We'll go and see her. She might know something." As we left the vicarage, Dennis came running towards us. "What about that footprint I found?" he said to the inspector. "It was the gardener's," said Inspector Slack. "You don't think it might be someone else wearing the gardener's boots?" "No, I don't. You're not arresting Uncle Len, are you?" asked Dennis. "Why should I?" asked Slack. "Because only the day before the crime he said that anyone who murdered Colonel Prothero would be doing the world a favour." "Ah," said Inspector Slack. "That explains something Mary said when I spoke to her. Come on, Clement." "Where are you going? Can I come too?" asked Dennis. "No, you can't," I said. We left him looking after us with a hurt expression. We went up to the neat front door of Mrs. Price Ridley's house, and the inspector rang the bell. A pretty servant answered the door. "Is Mrs. Price Ridley in?" asked Melchett. "No, sir. She's gone down to the police station." As we left, Melchett said, "If she's gone to confess to the murder too, I really shall go mad." Chapter 13. We discovered Mrs. Price Ridley talking very fast to a patient policeman. She stopped when she saw us. "Ah, I am glad you are taking action after what happened. Shocking it was. Well, have you anything you can tell us about it?" Melchett asked. "It's your job to tell me." "We're doing our best, Mrs. Price Ridley," said the chief constable. "But this man hadn't even heard of it till I told him," she cried. We all looked at the policeman. "The lady was called on the telephone," he said. "Bad language was used." "Oh, I see," Colonel Melchett said. "You came down here to make a complaint." Mrs. Price Ridley began talking again. "I was telephoned in my own house and insulted." "When?" "Yesterday evening, about 6:30, and I was threatened." "What did they threaten you with?" "I can't remember. Was it a man's voice or a woman's?" "It was an unpleasant voice," said Mrs. Price Ridley. "Now deep, now high, a very strange voice." "Probably a joke," said the Colonel. "But can you tell me exactly what was said?" Mrs. Price Ridley thought about it. "You promise to tell no one outside this room?" "Of course." "Well," this person began by saying, "You are a very unpleasant old woman who tells lies. Me, Colonel Melchett, and now the police are after you." "Of course. You were upset," said Melchett, trying not to smile. "Unless you keep quiet, it will be very bad for you," I replied. "Who are you?" And the voice answered, "The Avenger." I gave a little cry, and the person laughed. Then they put down the telephone. I thought I was going to faint, so when I heard a shot in the woods, he's, the stores, and the faint hasd Inspector Slack. Yes, like a very big gun. I had to lie down on the sofa. Shocking, said Melchett, and the shot was loud, as though it was close by. Perhaps because I was upset. What time was this? About 6:30. Well, said Melchett, we'll see what we can find out for you. Just think of the call as a joke, and don't worry, Mrs. Price Ridley, I said. She looked at me coldly. Obviously she was still cross about the missing pound note, and shaking her head she left. So, that is 3 people who heard the shot, said Inspector Slack. We've now got to find out who fired it, but first, I'm going to investigate that telephone call. Mrs. Price Ridley's. The inspector smiled. No, I meant the call that got you out of the vicarage. And the next thing is to find out what everyone was doing that evening between 6 and 7. We'll begin with you, Mr. Clement. Oh, well, the telephone call was at about 5:30. A man's voice or a woman's? A woman's, I think. But I thought it was Mrs. Abbott speaking. And you left immediately? How long did it take you? It's nearly 2 miles. So... And where was Mrs. Clement? She was in London. She arrived back by the 6:50. Right, that finishes with the vicarage. I'll be off to Old Hall next. And then I want to talk to Mrs. Lestrange. Why did she go to see Prothero the night before he was killed? Chapter 14. On my way home, Dr. Haydock stopped his car beside me just outside his house. I've taken Mrs. Prothero home, he called. Come in a minute. So I did. As we sat down, I told him that we now knew the time of the shot. That clears Anne Prothero, he said. Well, I'm glad it's neither of those two. I like them both. I believed him, and yet I wondered why he now looked so unhappy. This morning he had looked like a man free from worry. Suddenly he said, I meant to tell you about your curate, Hawes. All this trouble made me forget. Is he ill? Not exactly. You know, of course, that he has had sleeping sickness? No, I said. I didn't. When did he have it? About a year ago. He got better. But it's a strange illness. The whole character may change after it. Haydock, I said, if you knew that someone was a murderer, would you tell the police, or would you stay silent? He turned on me angrily. Why do you ask me that? Well, as a doctor, if you somehow discovered the truth, I wondered what you would do, that's all. His anger disappeared. I hope I would do my duty, Clement. But which of those choices do you think would be your duty? He looked at me. Every man has to decide for himself. Well, I must be going, I said. I'm already late for lunch. My family demanded a full account of the morning's activities when I arrived. But then Mary came in. Mr. Hawes wants to see you. I've put him in the sitting room. Then she handed me a note. I tore it open and read, Dear Mr. Clement, I would be very grateful if you could come and see me this afternoon. I am in great trouble and would like your advice. Sincerely yours, Estelle Lestrange. Chapter 15. Hawes was shaking all over. I told him he should be in bed, but he said that he was perfectly well. I called to tell you how sorry I was that such a death has happened in the vicarage. But they haven't arrested Mr. Redding. No, I said. That was all a mistake. Why? Do the police suspect someone else? Colonel Prothero was not a popular man. But murder, for murder, one would need a very strong reason. I suppose so. Have you told the police about that man Archer threatening Prothero? No, I said. I have not. I overheard Prothero telling you yesterday, so I hope you will. I was silent. Archer is a poacher, but friendly and cheerful. He was probably very angry about being sent to prison, but would feel differently when he came out. If he shot Colonel Prothero, there is no evidence of any kind that he did. I don't understand you, sir. Don't you? I said. "But you're young. When you get to my age, you will find that you like to think the best of people. I just wondered if Colonel Prothero had told you something." "Nothing that you didn't hear." Hawes was nervous, and his behaviour strange. I remembered what Dr. Haydock had said about his illness, and supposed that explained it. He left unwillingly, as though he had more to say but didn't know how to say it. And then I also left to go and see Mrs. Lestrange. In the sitting-room, Mrs. Lestrange rose to meet me. There was something dead about her face. Only the eyes were alive. There was a watchful look in them. We sat down. "It was very good of you to come, Mr. Clement. I wanted to talk to you the other day. Then I decided not to. I was wrong. I am in a very strange position, Mr. Clement, and I want to ask your advice about what I should do next. What is past and cannot be undone. You understand?" Before I could reply, the maid came in. "There is a police inspector here, and he says he must see you." Mrs. Lestrange said calmly, "Show him in, Hilda." Slack marched in. "Good afternoon, madam." Then he saw me and frowned. Mrs. Lestrange took no notice. "What can I do for you, Inspector?" "Murder of Colonel Prothero. I'm asking everyone where they were yesterday evening between the hours of 6 and 7 p.m. I was here, in this house." "Oh, and your maid was here too?" "No, it was Hilda's afternoon out." "So, you will have to trust me," said Mrs. Lestrange, smiling. "You were at home all afternoon?" "You said between 6 and 7, Inspector. I went out for a walk earlier. I returned some time before 5 o'clock." "Then if a lady, Miss Hartnell perhaps, said that she came here about 6 o'clock, rang the bell but got no answer, you would say she was mistaken?" "Oh, no. If your maid is in, she can say you are not at home. If you are alone and do not want to see people, well, the only thing to do is to let them ring." Inspector Slack looked confused. "Miss Hartnell is very boring," said Mrs. Lestrange. "She rang at least 6 times before she went away. So if anyone said that they'd seen you out and about then—" "Oh, but they didn't, did they? Because I was in, you see." "Exactly, madam." The inspector moved his chair a little nearer. "I understand that you visited Colonel Prothero the night before his death." "Yes." "Can you tell me what you talked about?" "It was private." "I'm afraid I must ask you tell me about it, private or not." "But I shall not tell you. I will only say that nothing which was discussed had anything to do with the crime." "I don't think you are the best judge of that." "Then again, you will have to trust me, Inspector." Inspector Slack's face was suddenly very red. "This is a serious matter, Mrs. Lestrange. I want the truth." He banged his hand on a table. Mrs. Lestrange said nothing. "Did you know Colonel Prothero well?" There was a pause before she said, "I had not seen him for several years." "It was an unusual time to call on him." "No, it wasn't. I wanted to see him alone." "Why didn't you want to see Mrs. or Miss Prothero?" "That, Inspector, is my business." Inspector Slack got up. "Good afternoon, madam. But remember, we are going to find out the truth." When he had gone, Mrs. Lestrange also got up and held out her hand to me. "I am going to send you away. It is too late for advice now." Then she turned away. I know what I must do. Chapter 16. I had arranged to visit Mrs. Prothero to discuss the funeral arrangements, so I walked to Old Hall. When we had finished, I said goodbye and took the private path towards the vicarage. I had a plan. When I found a place where the plants beside the path looked as though someone had walked on them, I left the path and forced my way through. But suddenly I heard someone else moving very close to me. As I paused, Lawrence Redding appeared, carrying a large stone. I must have looked shocked, for he started to laugh. "No," he said. "It's not a clue, it's a gift." "What?" "I wanted an excuse to call on Miss Marple, and I heard that she loves old stones for her Japanese garden." "True," I said. "But why do you want to see her?" "Well, if there was anything to be seen yesterday evening, Miss Marple saw it. Clement, I'm going to solve this crime. For Anne's sake." He paused, then said, "What are you doing in the woods, Vicar?" I didn't know what to say. "We've got the same idea, haven't we?" He smiled. "How did the murderer come to the study? First way, along the road and through the gate. Second way, by the front door. Third way, is there a third way? My idea was to see if any of the bushes were broken near the vicarage garden wall. That was just my idea," I admitted. "But I suddenly thought that I'd like to see Miss Marple first." So we walked together to her house. She was working in the garden, and was very pleased with the stone. "It's so kind of you, Mr. Redding." Then Lawrence asked his most important question. But Miss Marple was sure she had seen nobody in the road when he and Anne were in the studio. "Did you see anyone go by the path into the woods that afternoon?" I asked. "Or come from there?" "Oh, yes. Dr. Stone and Miss Cram. It's the quickest way to the Barrow. That was just after 2 o'clock. And Dr. Stone returned that way, as you know, Mr. Redding, because he joined you and Mrs. Prothero." "And that shot," I said. "The one you heard, Miss Marple. Mr. Redding and Mrs. Prothero must have heard it too." "Yes," Lawrence said. "I believe I did hear some shots." "I only heard one," said Miss Marple. "I can't remember it very well," said Lawrence. "All I could think about was Anne." Miss Marple changed the subject. "Inspector Slack asked me whether I heard the shot after Mr. Redding and Mrs. Prothero had left the studio or before. I believe that it was after." "Then it couldn't have been Dr. Stone," said Lawrence. "Although nobody has ever thought that he did shoot Prothero." "Ah," said Miss Marple, "but I always think it wise to suspect everybody just a little." "Well then," said Lawrence, "can you think why Mrs. Lestrange visited Prothero after dinner on Wednesday night?" "No, but I expect someone heard something. Perhaps, Mr. Redding, you can find out. Women servants hate talking to the police. But a nice-looking young man, I'm sure they would tell him at once." "I'll go and try this evening," said Lawrence. "But first, the vicar and I have a little job to do." So we said goodbye to Miss Marple and walked back to the woods. We went up the path until we came to a new place, where it looked as though someone had left the path on the right-hand side. We turned and walked this way, but after a short distance, there were no more broken bushes. So we went back to the path and walked a little farther along it. Again we came to a place where the bushes looked broken. This time we went towards the vicarage, and finally to where the bushes grew against the wall. Then suddenly there was the sound of breaking wood. I pushed forward, and came face to face with Inspector Slack. "So it's you," he said. "What are you both doing here?" "A little ashamed," we explained. "Exactly," said the inspector. "I had the same idea. Would you like to know something?" "Yes," I said. "Whoever murdered Colonel Prothero did not come this way. There's no sign that anyone climbed over this wall. Whoever shot the colonel came through the front door. There's no other way he could have come." "Impossible," I cried. "Why impossible?" he said. "Your door is open. Anyone can walk in. They know you are out. They know Mrs. Clement is in London. They know Dennis is at a tennis party. And they don't need to come through the village. Just opposite the vicarage gate is a public footpath. Yes, that's the way the person came." And it really seemed that he must be right. Chapter 17. Inspector Slack came round to see me the next morning. "Well, sir," he said, "I've found out about that telephone call that you received. And? It's rather strange. It was put through from the North Lodge of Old Hall. The place is empty, but a window was open. There were no fingerprints on the telephone because it had been cleaned. That tells us something." "What?" "It shows that call was made deliberately to get you out of the house. So the murder was planned. If the call had just been a joke, the fingerprints would not have been wiped off so carefully." "I understand. And I've found out something else. You remember Mrs. Price Ridley's complaint about that call to her house?" "Yes." "Well, we tracked it, and do you know where it came from?" "Mr. Lawrence Redding's cottage." "What?" I said. But it wasn't Mr. Redding who made the call. At that time, 6:30, he was on his way to the Blue Boar with Dr. Stone. So, someone walked into the empty cottage and used the telephone. That's 2 strange telephone calls in one day, and I bet they were made by the same person. Why? Well, first Mr. Redding's pistol, then his telephone. Someone's trying to make him look guilty. So why was the first call not made from his cottage? I asked. What did Mr. Redding do most afternoons? He went up to Old Hall and painted Miss Prothero's picture, and from his cottage he would go through the north gate. Now you see why the call was made from there. I thought for a moment. Were there any fingerprints on Mr. Redding's phone? There were not, said the inspector crossly. That old woman who cleans for him wiped them off yesterday morning. But if only that shot hadn't come just at the end of the call, well, I'd know where to look. Where? Well, what about the lady who called on Colonel Prothero the night before the murder? Mrs. Lestrange, I cried. Yes, the inspector said. Suppose Mrs. Lestrange had successfully blackmailed Prothero in the past. Then, years later, she hears that he is living in this village, so comes down here and tries it again. But perhaps this time he says he will go to the police. So she kills him. I said, Inspector, Mrs. Lestrange is not the kind of person to blackmail someone. She's a lady. Well, sir, you are a vicar, he said. So you don't know much about the world. Lady indeed. That woman could push a knife into you without feeling anything. Strangely, I could imagine Mrs. Lestrange doing that, but not blackmail. But of course, she can't have telephoned Mrs. Price Ridley and shot Colonel Prothero at exactly the same time, he continued. Then suddenly he shouted, Got it. That telephone call was an alibi. She knew we'd connect it with the first one, so she paid some village boy to make the call for her. And I'm going to find out who. The inspector hurried off. Miss Marple wants to see you, said Griselda, appearing at the door. She sent over a very strange note. For some reason she can't leave her house. Do go and find out why. I found Miss Marple in a very excited state. My nephew, Raymond West, is coming here today, she explained. He writes very clever books, though in real life people are not nearly so unpleasant as he makes his characters. Clever young men know so little about life. Was something you wanted to see me about? I asked. Oh, of course. I had forgotten. Yes. It was about a strange thing that happened last night. I couldn't sleep because I kept thinking about Colonel Prothero, so I got up and looked out of my window. And what do you think I saw? I don't know. Gladys Cram, said Miss Marple. Going into the woods with a suitcase. A suitcase? Yes. Why would she take a suitcase into the woods at 12 o'clock at night? I don't expect it has anything to do with the murder. But it is a strange thing, and just now we must all take notice of strange things. Perhaps she was going to sleep in the barrow, I suggested. She didn't, said Miss Marple, because a short time afterwards she came back, and she didn't have the suitcase with her. Chapter 18. The inquest into Colonel Prothero's death was held that same Saturday afternoon at the Blue Boar. Lawrence Redding told how he had found the body, and admitted that the pistol belonged to him. Mrs. Prothero said that she had last seen her husband at about 5:45 when they parted in the village street. She had gone to the vicarage at about 6:15 and thought that the study was empty, but later she had realized that if her husband had been sitting at the desk, she would not have seen him. I gave evidence next. I told of my appointment with Prothero and the phone call asking me to go to the abbot's house. I described how I had found the body. How many people, Mr. Clement, knew that Colonel Prothero was coming to see you that evening? The coroner asked. My wife knew, and my nephew Dennis, and Colonel Prothero himself mentioned it that morning in the village. Several people must have heard, as he spoke very loudly. Dr. Haydock then described the appearance of the body and the exact injuries. It was his opinion that the colonel had been shot at approximately 6:20 to 6:30, certainly not later than 6:35. Inspector Slack's evidence was careful and short, The unfinished letter was produced and the time on it, 6:20, noted, and because of the clock, it was thought that the time of death was 6:22. Our servant Mary was next. She said she hadn't heard anything. Colonel Prothero had arrived at 6:15 exactly. She heard the church clock just after she had shown him into the study. She didn't hear any shot. Well, of course, there must have been a shot, because the gentleman was found shot, but she had not heard it. Mrs. Lestrange had been asked to give evidence, but a medical certificate, signed by Dr. Haydock, said that she was too ill to attend. The last person to give evidence was Mrs. Archer, who cleaned Lawrence Redding's cottage. She recognized the pistol. She had seen it in Mr. Redding's sitting room. The last time she had seen it was on the day of the murder at lunchtime when she left. I was surprised. The inspector had told me she wasn't sure of the time when he questioned her, but she was sure now. The verdict was given almost immediately: murder by person or persons unknown. As I left, I saw of a group of young men with bright, interested faces waiting outside, so I went straight back into the Blue Boar and was lucky enough to see Dr. Stone. "Newspaper reporters," I said. "Could I wait here with you for a while?" "Of course, Mr. Clement." He led the way upstairs and into his sitting room, where Miss Cram was working. She gave me a wide smile. "Awful, isn't it, not knowing who did it?" "Were you there?" I asked Dr. Stone. "No, I have no interest in such things. I only think about archaeology." "It must be very interesting," I said. This was just what he wanted to hear. Immediately he began to explain why it was so interesting. Dr. Stone was a little man. His head was round and bald, and he wore thick glasses. He soon began to explain his disagreement with Colonel Prothero, a very stupid man. Because he had read a few books, he thought he knew more than a man who has studied the subject all his life, and— "You'll miss your train if you are not careful," interrupted Gladys. "Oh." He looked at his watch. "This is a wonderful girl, Mr. Clement. She never forgets anything." He went into the next room and returned with a suitcase. "I'm going up to London for 2 days to see my mother and my lawyers. On Tuesday I shall return." Dr. Stone attempted to leave, carrying the suitcase, as well as a large coat and a bag of books. I rushed to help him, and so we walked together to the station, Dr. Stone with the suitcase, and I with the coat and books. "Goodness!" Dr. Stone suddenly cried. "The train! A train from London was standing in the station, and the train for London was just coming in." We began to run, and inside we bumped into a very good-looking young man. I recognized him immediately as Miss Marple's nephew, and I apologized, but he was not pleased. Dr. Stone climbed on the train just before it started. I began to walk back to the village, and our local chemist, Mr. Cherubim, joined me. "He was lucky not to miss his train," he said, "but you can never be sure they will be on time. Do you know, last Thursday, the day of the murder, I had been to a meeting in London, and the 6:50 train was half an hour late. I didn't get home until 7:30. "Annoying," I said. Then I saw Lawrence Redding on the other side of the road, and told Mr. Cherubim that I had to speak to him. Chapter 19. "I am very glad to see you," said Lawrence. "Would you like to come to my cottage?" We went up the path, and he took a key from his pocket. "You keep the door locked now," I said. "Yes." "Someone knew about that pistol of mine." He opened the door and I went inside. "That means that the murderer must have been inside this house. Perhaps even had a drink with me." "Not necessarily," I replied. "The whole village probably knows where you keep your socks." Then suddenly I asked, "Was the pistol loaded?" Lawrence shook his head. "But there was a box of bullets beside it. Unless the real murderer is found, I shall be the suspect until I die. But let me tell you about last night." He had, following Miss Marple's advice, gone up to Old Hall and talked to the servant Rose. "It's about Colonel Prothero's death," he had said to her. "I feel that someone might have seen or heard something, and I wondered if you could help me." "Yes, sir. I can imagine that Lawrence must have looked very attractive, with his blue eyes shining. So can you tell me anything about the lady who called to see Colonel Prothero the night before he died?" Mrs. Lestrange? Yes. Well, Gladys said, Gladys? Gladys a kitchen servant. So, what did she say? Oh, nothing. We were just talking. Lawrence looked at her. I wonder what Mrs. Lestrange wanted to see Colonel Prothero about. Rose, if Gladys overheard something, it might not seem important. I'd be so grateful to you. Well, she was walking past the study window, and the master was there with the lady, and of course he did talk very loud. Of course, said Lawrence. She couldn't avoid overhearing. Can I go into the kitchen and speak to her? Oh, no, sir, Rose cried. She doesn't want anyone else to know. At last, a meeting was arranged in the garden, and here Lawrence spoke to a very nervous Gladys. I didn't hear much, she told him. I understand. Well, the master was very angry. After all these years, that's what he said. You dare to come here. Then he said, I refuse. You will not see her. I will not allow it. It sounded as though the lady wanted to tell Mrs. Prothero something, and he didn't want her to. And I thought, men are all alike. Even Colonel Prothero, a churchwarden, and... Did you hear anything else? He said, I don't believe it. Whatever Dr. Haydock says, I don't believe it. Did you hear the lady speak at all? Only at the end. She said, by this time tomorrow night, you may be dead. So when I heard about the murder, I said to Rose, it's her who did it. I thought of Miss Marple's churchwarden with his second secret family. Was this the same situation? I also wondered about Haydock. He had saved Mrs. Lestrange from giving evidence at the inquest. Perhaps he suspected her of the crime and was trying to protect her. But something in me said, it can't be her. Why? And then something else replied, because she's a very attractive woman. That's why. Chapter 20. When I got back to the vicarage, Griselda met me in the hall. There were tears in her eyes. She's leaving. Who's leaving? Mary. Well, I said, we'll get another servant. Len, Griselda said. Don't you care? I didn't. In fact, I felt rather happy at the thought of no more burnt vegetables and tough meat. I suppose, I said, that someone else has asked her to work for them. No, said Griselda. Nobody else wants her. But she's upset, so please go and talk to her. And she pushed me into the kitchen before I could argue. Mary was washing potatoes in the sink. Mrs. Clement says that you wish to leave us, I said. Will you tell me what has upset you? I have never been in a house where they had a murder, Mary said. And I never want to be again. I think that is very unlikely, I replied. Well, anyway, Colonel Prothero sent lots of poor fellows to prison just for shooting at a bird. And then, before he's even been buried, his daughter comes here and says I don't do my work properly. Do you mean that Miss Prothero came to this house? Yes. I found her here when I came back from that inquest. She was in the study. I'm looking for my little yellow hat, she says. I left it here the other day. Well, I said, there was no hat here when I cleaned the room on Thursday morning. And she said, but I don't expect you would have seen it. You don't spend much time cleaning a room, do you? And she pointed at some dust on the table. So I said, if the vicar and his wife are satisfied, that is all that matters. And she laughed and said, oh, but are they? Mary, I said, we would be very sorry to lose you. There were tears in Mary's eyes. I wouldn't like to upset you or Mrs. Clement. Then that's all right, I said. I left the kitchen and found Griselda and Dennis waiting for me in the hall. She's staying. I said, and told them what had upset Mary. How like Lettuce, said Dennis lovingly. She never knows where she's left anything. It's partly what makes her so attractive to everybody. Not Lawrence Redding, I said. Oh, but Lawrence is very attractive himself, said Griselda. So, he likes the quiet type. Like Anne. I don't think he has any idea that Lettuce cares about him. But she doesn't, said Dennis. She doesn't even like him. She told me so. Griselda did not reply. She turned to me. I forgot to tell you, Len. Miss Marple has invited us over tonight after dinner, to entertain the nephew. I said we'd go. Of course. I went into my study and walked over to the desk. Here Prothero had sat when he had been shot. Here, where I was standing, his enemy had stood. Then I noticed a flash of bright blue on the floor. I bent down. By the desk was a small object. I picked it up. It was a blue earring, and I remembered exactly where I had last seen it. Chapter 21. Miss Marple's nephew, Raymond West, is supposed to be a wonderful writer. His books are about unpleasant people with very boring lives. He turned immediately to Griselda, and as they talked, I heard her say, "Do you have any ideas about the murder, Mr. West?" "Only that it is probably a very ordinary murder, by an angry poacher most likely." "Poor Mrs. Prothero," Miss Marple said. "There are so many letters to write. Miss Cram is going to Old Hall to help her. She is free this weekend because Dr. Stone is not working on the barrow." "Stone?" said Raymond. "Is that the archaeologist fellow?" "Yes. I met him at a dinner not long ago, and we had a most interesting talk. I must visit him." "He's just gone to London," I said. "In fact, we bumped into you at the station this afternoon. But that was a little fat man, with glasses. That wasn't Stone." "I don't understand," I said. "The suitcase, of course," said Miss Marple. "It reminds me of the man who went round the village pretending to be the gas inspector. He stole a lot of valuable things." "Now this really is interesting," said Raymond West. "But has it anything to do with the murder?" asked Griselda. "It is," Miss Marple said. "Another strange thing." "Yes," I said, "and I think the inspector should be told about it." Chapter 22. Inspector Slack's orders, when I spoke to him on the telephone, were short and strong. We must say nothing to anybody about the suitcase, and a search for it would begin immediately. Griselda and I returned home very excited, but soon Dennis followed me into my study, looking upset. "What is the matter?" I asked. "I don't want to go into the Navy." I was very surprised. "But you love the sea. That's the job you have always wanted to do." "I want to go into banking. I need to get rich quickly." "You've got to be rich to marry a girl who expects to have everything she wants." "You know," I said gently, "not all girls are like Lettice Prothero." He was suddenly angry. "You don't like her. Nobody does. Even the Napiers are saying awful things about her, just because she left their tennis party a bit early. But she was bored, and she's very kind, really. I wanted to leave too, but she said, no, because it would upset the Napiers. So I stayed. I would do anything for Lettice. Poor boy. We said good night, and he went up to bed. Next morning at breakfast, Griselda showed me a note she had just received. It was from Anne Prothero. "Dear Griselda, could you and the vicar come for lunch today? Something strange has happened, and I would like Mr. Clement's advice. With love, Anne Prothero." "We must go, of course," said Griselda. "I wonder what has happened." "Well," I said, "the funeral is tomorrow morning. Perhaps it has something to do with that." At Old Hall we were shown into the sitting room. Miss Cram was there with Anne Prothero. "I saw a reporter at the inquest," Anne said. "He asked me if I wanted to find my husband's murderer, and I said, yes. And then he asked me whether I suspected anyone, and I said, oh no. And then he said, did I think the person who committed the crime knew the village, and I said they certainly seemed to, and that was all. And now look at this." She held out a newspaper. Across the top were the words, "Widow says she will never rest till she has hunted down her husband's murderer." "It doesn't sound like me, does it?" said Anne. Griselda and I agreed. We then went into the dining room for lunch, where Lettice joined us. After we had had coffee, Anne said, "I want to have a little talk with the vicar." I followed her up the stairs to her small sitting room, but to my surprise, she continued along to the end of the passage, then up a narrow staircase, and into a large dark room under the roof. On the floor there were suitcases, broken furniture, and some pictures. Anne smiled. "I am sleeping very badly just now, and at about 3 o'clock this morning I thought I heard someone moving about the house. So I got up to find out. I thought that the sounds came from up above, but when I called up these stairs, is anybody there?" There was no answer, so I went back to bed. Then today I decided to come up here, and I found this. A picture was leaning against the wall with its back towards us. She turned it round. It was a picture of someone, but the face had been cut in such a violent way that it was unrecognizable. "What a shocking thing," I said. "Who is the picture of?" "I don't know. All these things were in the attic when I married Lucius, and I've never looked at them before. Do you think I ought to tell the police about it?" "I don't know. It doesn't seem to be connected with the murder. But it is another strange thing." I followed Anne down to her sitting room. "What are your plans?" I asked suddenly. "Oh, I'm going to live here for another 6 months. I don't want to, but I have to, because otherwise people will say that I ran away, because I felt guilty, especially when—" She paused. "When the 6 months are over, I am going to marry Lawrence. I said that you would." She started to cry. "You don't know how grateful I am to you. If we'd been planning to go away together, and then Lucius had died, it would be so awful now. But you made us both see how wrong it would be." "I too am thankful," I said. "But you know," she sat up, "unless the real murderer is found, people will always think it was Lawrence, especially when he marries me. That's another reason why I'm staying. I'm going to find out the truth, and that's why I asked Miss Cram to come here. I think she knows something, and I want to watch her." "Then the very night she arrives, that picture is cut," I said. "You think she did it? But why?" I couldn't think of an answer, so I took the blue earring from my pocket. "I believe this is yours." "Oh, yes." She held out her hand. "Where did you find it?" But I did not put the jewel into her hand. "Would you mind if I kept it a little longer?" "Why, certainly." I then asked her about her financial situation. "It is a rather rude question, I know, but I am concerned." "I don't think it's rude at all. Lucius was very well off, and he left things equally divided between me and Lettice. Old Hall goes to me, but Lettice can choose enough furniture for a small house, and she will have enough money to buy one." I said goodbye to Anne, but there was one more thing I needed to do. And when I found Lettice alone downstairs in the sitting room, I went in and shut the door. "Lettice," I said, and held out the earring, "why did you drop this in my study?" "I never dropped anything in your study," she said. "And that's not mine. That's Anne's." "I know," I said. "But she has only been in my study once since the murder, and then she was dressed in black, and did not wear blue earrings." "So, she must have dropped it before. She was wearing them on Thursday." "Thursday," I said, "was the day of the murder. Mrs. Prothero did come to the study, but only as far as the window, not inside the room." "Where did you find this?" "Underneath the desk." "Then it looks," said Lettice, "as though she didn't speak the truth. And now I know that you are not speaking the truth, Lettice, because the last time I saw this earring was on Friday morning, when I came to Old Hall with Colonel Melchett. It was lying with the other one in your stepmother's bedroom." "Oh!" She burst into tears. I said gently, "Lettice, why did you do it?" "What?" She jumped up, looking wild and frightened. "What do you mean? Was it because you disliked Anne?" "Oh, yes." She seemed suddenly confident again. "So I put the thing under the desk. I hoped it would get her into trouble. I told her that I would return the earring to Anne and say nothing about how I had found it.